The Carolina Hurricanes start their 6-game, 12-day road trip with their first stop being at the Shark Tank in San Jose to take on the Sharks. We get some updates about Jaccob, Slavin, and Pyotr Kocehtkov ahead of the trip. Also talk about why it's going to be impactful to have Bussi and Legault be a part of the roster and probably get some ice time. And then who are the players to watch in the game between the Hurricanes and the Sharks? All of that on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everyday for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hawk Airs, also the co-host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all of my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. As you heard at the top of the show on the Tuesday episode of the pod, we're going to be talking about some updates from about Slavin and Kocehtkov, looking at why having Bussi and Legault being part of these games might be beneficial for the Hurricanes in the next up mentality, and who are going to be the players to watch in Tuesday night's game between the Canes and the Sharks. However, before we jump into all of that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So we did have a practice on Monday on Canadian Thanksgiving as the Hurricanes took a skate at Lenovo Center before they flew out west to start their 6-game, 12, 13-day road trip. However, it depends on you want to count those days, but they're basically going to be gone for almost 2 weeks. Now, these were the lines and defensive and the pairings in the practice. Ehlers, Aho, Jarvis first line, Svechnikov, Stankov, and Blake. No surprise there in your top 6. Martin, Extall, Carrier, and then Hall, Jankowski, Robinson, with Kotkaniemi being the extra. But then on the defense, Miller, Walker, Nikishin, Gostisbehere, Riley, Chatfield. And of course, with Anderson and Bussi in the goals. Now, the name that was very noticeable that was not a part of that was Jaccob Slavin. And we did get an update after the practice. And right now, Jaccob Slavin is kind of an unknown of what's going on going into the road trip, but he was reevaluated on Monday. Still waiting to hear what exactly that's about. Brandon Bussi said he's getting looked at again. He didn't feel great at the end of the game on Saturday against the Flyers, so that's TBD, I guess, is what he said. Now, that is a very interesting development with the fact that we know that, during one of the camp visits that Slavin did during the offseason, it was apparently he had a knee brace on, and the Hurricanes think that this is a reoccurrence of what is going on with his knee. Like I said, he's being reevaluated. Nothing's been updated on Monday, but whenever you listen to this on Tuesday, we might have an indication of what's going on with Jaccob Slavin. As of right now, he is TBD. If that is the case, they need a 7th defenseman, and on Monday as well, they called up Charles Alexis Legault. Of course, we'll talk more about why that is going to be very huge for the Hurricanes if they decide to use him on the road trip. It makes sense because if he's going to be out for a game or two, or however long it is, you need a 7th defenseman, and bringing up Charles Alexis Legault makes sense because he had a great preseason and he had a great training camp, and bringing him in gives you almost a balance of the, if you want to do 3 left shots and 3 right shots, Legault gives you that option as one of the first call-ups and probably one of the most NHL-ready guys right now that is in Chicago with the Wolves. So that's a big move there. The other key piece of news was that Pyotr Kocehtkov was placed on IR retroactive to October 5th. Now, in terms of that, we still don't really know what's going on with that, how long he's going to be out for. All we know is he's on IR. Now, the thing is, they do have Brandon Bussi, who they picked up off of waivers from the Florida Panthers. Now, when asked about how they're going to look at the goalies over the coming road trip, Rod Burnmore did say, I'm pretty sure we'll put Brandon in there. I don't know when, but we don't want to overdo Freddie at the start of the season. Later on, he talks about the confidence and how much he has it in the newcomer that is Bussi. That's why we picked him up. We've played 3 goalies in the last how many years? We're always using a third guy, so we definitely have no problem with that. And it's true. The Hurricanes have gone through Antti Ranta. They've gone through Dustin Tokarski, Spencer Martin, and a bunch of other guys. So having a third guy makes sense, and that's why the Hurricanes decided to go with a third goalie in Bussi, because I guess they didn't really know what's going on with Pyotr. I know a lot of stuff has changed over the few days since the last preseason game where he did get injured. People thought, well, why send Kaden Primo down? They didn't know what was going on with that situation. They thought he might get better, so they figured we'll send him down. Unfortunately, he gets claimed, but they did pick up Bussi off of waivers as an insurance policy just in case, and it's a good thing they did because he eventually did get picked up. And now with Toronto, that's why you get Bussi. And I know some people are kind of wondering, well, how is he going to be? And for me, as someone who covered Bussi for a little bit, so we'll talk more about him in segment 2, but I think that's a huge move for the Hurricanes, and I think it's a definite help, despite the lack of not playing in NHL games, but he has proven some good numbers. But that's kind of where you're at right now. Now, they did say Pyotr could maybe at some point join them on the road trip. There's no indication if he will make it, but there is the slight possibility that he could join the trip at some point. They're just not for sure when. Now, it sounds like if Slavin's unavailable to travel with the team right away, that's why you see them calling up Legault. And that's the same thing like with Kocehtkov. You could see Slavin potentially at some point join the team on the trip. So as of right now, the Hurricanes might not have Slavin and Kocehtkov Tuesday night against the Sharks. Only time will tell, but that definitely makes it a very interesting case. Now, the Hurricanes have played without Jaccob Slavin before, and they did win some games, so I think that the Hurricanes are very capable of doing it. Of course, now you've got potentially Miller on the top line with Walker, which is still a pretty decent top pair, all things considered. And then you're looking at Nikish and Gostisbehere getting kind of moved up to the second pairing, and honestly, they've been doing pretty well, too, this year. Like I said, they're already up to a +8 as a group, with Gostisbehere leading the entire team with a +5. And then you have, Jalen Chatfield with Mike Riley. And Mike Riley, he's been there and done that, journeyman defenseman at this point, but someone who's very capable of coming in and being a third-pair left-shot defenseman for the Hurricanes. So if it's just 1 or 2 games, let's say it's the Sharks and the Ducks games, I think they're still in capable hands with that 6 as your main group, and then Legault being as your 7th. Or maybe if they decide to go and have an even balance of 3 left shots and 3 right shots, Legault getting slid into the group wouldn't be bad either. But overall, I think the Hurricanes are going to be okay in terms of the defense. Goaltending, like I said, they're going to have Anderson. I know there's at least some in-between days off in between games, but like I said, like what Rod Burnmore said, I don't see the Hurricanes overusing Freddie so early into the season, especially on this road trip, because even with the day off in between a couple of these games, you really don't want to throw him out and have him go against the Sharks, the Ducks, the Knights, the Avalanche, the Stars. That is a huge ask for Freddie Anderson to go play all those games, even with the day off in between. So at some point, you're going to see Brandon Bussi making his NHL debut against one of these teams. It could be against the Sharks. It could be against the Ducks. Who really knows? So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. But that's kind of what we're looking at right now with the updates coming out of Monday's practice, is the fact that Slavin's getting reevaluated. As of right now, whenever we guys do listen to this podcast, maybe we do have an idea what's going on with Slavin, but right now he is TBD. Kocehtkov is on IR, like I said, retroactive to October 5th. Both those guys could potentially join the team at some point on the road trip. We're not sure when, but that's kind of what you're looking at right now. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out with the Carolina Hurricanes not having Jaccob Slavin as of right now, and also not having Pyotr Kocehtkov, with both those guys having lower body injuries. So it'll be very interesting to see how that works out overall. But for me, I'm not overly concerned with that. I think the Hurricanes are going to be fine regardless of how that works out. Now, I did talk about Brandon Bussi and Charles Alexis Legault a little bit in segment 1, but stick around for segment 2. I'll dive a little bit more into why I think these guys could be huge for the Hurricanes, even for a next man up mentality, even if it's for a game during the road trip. So stick around. We'll talk about it here in a second on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action, whether if it's your actual team or maybe even your fantasy football team. Plus, whether if you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. Now, I kind of talked about these guys a little bit early on in segment 1, but we're going to dive into them a little bit more here for segment 2 when looking at this road trip overall and why I think that even if they might just play one game, maybe they don't even play at all, but I think just the next step mentality when it comes to the Hurricanes and Brandon Bussi and Charles Alexis Legault, I think that's going to be very huge in terms of what the Hurricanes are going to need for this road trip. Now, things could probably change. Maybe Kocehtkov and Slavin come back and you don't really have to use them very much, but I still think this is something that the Hurricanes, this won't be a bad thing if you see Bussi and or Legault at some point on this road trip. Now, for Brandon Bussi, like I said, I said a little bit in segment 1. I covered him a little bit when I was with the Calder Times doing some AHL content for the American Hockey League. And the team that I covered was the Providence Bruins. Now, we had a Chicago writer at the time. We all, friend of the show, Andrew Rinaldi, was the Wolves guy at the time, so he was covering the team. So for me, I just like, okay, I'll cover the Providence Bruins. It's an Atlantic team. In the American, it was someone that was available. That's what I did. So I covered Bussi a little bit. Also, Michael Pyotr, who I really liked as well. But Bussi, I really liked his game. Now, looking at him, 27 years old, out of Sound Beach, New York, 6'4", 218, and he's definitely got some size on him. He actually played with Muskegon Lumberjacks back in the 18-19 season. They had some really good numbers, 7 shutouts, 33, 12, and 4. Of course, this is the USHL, still pretty solid overall. Then played 3 years at Western Michigan, and overall had some pretty good numbers. 265 goals against, a 910 save percentage in his freshman year. Junior year, 255 goals against, a 912 save percentage. They have 26 wins that year. And then proceeds to play 5 games with the Providence Bruins that year. Did have a shutout in 5 games. And then between 2022-23 through 24-25, played 111 games, including the 5 from the 21-22 season, where, like I said, didn't get any NHL time with the Bruins in Boston, but with the Providence Bruins, like I said, 111 games. Now, his first year in Providence, playing the full season, 32 games, 240 goals against, a 924 save percentage. 1 shutout was 22-5-4. Now, in the playoffs, he had a 228 goals against, a 926 save percentage, and 1-3. You kind of sense a theme when the Bruins of Providence make the playoffs, where Bussi will have unreal numbers, but the team in front of him doesn't really play great. 23-24, 4 games, 214 goals against, a 922 save percentage. Did have a shutout, but his only win in those playoffs was that shutout. And then this past season, 2 games, 242 goals against, a 918 save percentage, 1-1. And that was following up the last 2 seasons with Providence from 23-24, 24-25. 74 games between the 2 seasons, 6 shutouts, 38 wins. Of course, this past season, 15, 14, and 4. But you can kind of sense that with Brandon Bussi, with the Providence Bruins at least, he had some unreal numbers for them. Over 900 save percentage every year, basically a sub 2.8 goals against every season. Unreal in the playoffs. Basically, sub 2.5 goals against and a save percentage above 918 or better in all three of the playoffs that was with them, but just didn't have the team in front of them to do anything. It was a very inconsistent Providence Bruins group. Now, the reason why he never made it in Boston is because, unfortunately, at the time you're going through Linus Ullmark, you're also going through Jeremy Swayman, still going through Swayman now, but you got Jonas Korpisalo there, and you also got Michael DiPietro, who got time over him as well. Of course, DiPietro was an all-star last year. Bussi was an all-star 2 years ago in the American. So, unfortunately, he just got stuck in the logjam as a really good number 4 goalie in a system that had a ton of good goalies. And even with Ullmark going to Ottawa, Bussi, unfortunately, still played fourth fiddle to guys like Swayman, Korpisalo, and still Michael DiPietro. So he signs in Florida. You know, they got Bobrovsky. They brought in Daniel Tarasov from Columbus. So he, all intents and purposes, was probably going to Charlotte as the Charlotte Checkers as their starting goalie. And he's going to be the third goalie in the Panther system. Hurricanes pick him up. Lo and behold, now he's the number 3 goalie in Carolina behind Kocehtkov and Anderson. And now with Pyotr out, Bussi's making an opportunity. And I still think, regardless of the fact that he doesn't have any NHL games under his belt, you're still talking a very good record in 111 games in the American. And overall, his stats are really solid. I feel confident in Bussi, even if it's just for a game, maybe 2. Even if it's just 1, I still think that still gives Freddie rest. And I still think that gives the Hurricanes a lot of confidence in knowing that this guy with the team in front of him has the opportunity to keep him in the game and even get a win for the Hurricanes in his debut, because it's going to be an NHL debut for him. Yes, he's played in the preseason for the Bruins, but he's never played in the National Hockey League game that counts for a point. So if you put him in there, I think Bussi could have the potential to get his first win in his debut. So I feel really confident in that. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But I think he's going to be someone that's going to be very prominent for the Hurricanes. I feel pretty good about how that works out for Brandon Bussi, at least. Now, you heard me talk about this next guy for a lot during the offseason, Charles Alexis Legault, 6'3", 207. In reality, he's really 6'3", 215. His 215 really makes you feel like it's 225. But last season for Chicago Wolves, 63 games, 3 goals, 14 points. He was a plus 11 on the season. Not bad overall, especially in his first season in pro hockey, where the last 2 years before that, he played a Quinnipiac, of course, with Ron Brind'Amour's son, Skylar. His final season there, 9 goals, 24 points. How about a plus 36? That's really dang good for Charles Alexis Legault. And even in the one game he's played for the Chicago Wolves this year, where they defeated the Iowa Wild 4-1 this past Saturday, he did get a fight, won the fight, but he also finishes a plus 2 in that game. So, and you guys heard me say it, Legault's game almost molds into what Jaccob Slavin is, a very good defensive defenseman who has a little bit of an offense to him. Now, will his skill set be at the level of a Jaccob Slavin? Jaccob Slavin is one of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL. It's tough to beat him. But I think if you get the mold of what Slavin is and put it on Legault, and if Legault even gets to where half of the skill Slavin is, I think Legault's in a good spot for the Hurricanes as a future defenseman within the group of 6 guys that they have on the blue line. So if there's a next up mentality of, hey, they don't have Slavin, they kind of feel like they want to even up the pair, 3 left, 3 right shots. I think if they put Legault in, I think the Hurricanes are in a really good spot, and that's not a bad thing to have them in there if they want to feel like, okay, if we want to do Miller Walker and then maybe Nikishin Sheffield and Ghost Legault, that's not a bad pairing, honestly. Those are not bad pairings. You put Jalen Chatfield with Alexander Nikishin, great guy to learn the system from. And then you got Ghost back on his natural side, along with Legault on his right side, where you have that offensive-minded Ghost with that defensive-minded Legault as your third pair. That's a nice third pair to have for the Carolina Hurricanes with the absence of Slavin, even for a couple of games. So if there is that next up mentality for Bussi and Legault to be in this, I think the Hurricanes are in a very good spot. Now, with all that being said, the Hurricanes do play some hockey on Tuesday night against the San Jose Sharks. I know that so far this episode has been a lot of updates and next up mentality type of guys, but trust me, we are going to do a preview of the game for Tuesday night against the Sharks. There's a lot of stuff that was a lot of context that needed to be had before we get to this point. Now we're here. Now let's talk about this game. But first, let's hear from Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let the financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNHL. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. All right, so we talked about the practice of Monday, got some injury updates with Slavin and Kocehtkov, talked about the next up mentality if the Hurricanes use Bussi and Legault on the road trip, even for the first couple of games. Now let's talk about the Tuesday night game for your Carolina Hurricanes against the San Jose Sharks. Now, this game is set for 10 p.m. Eastern, so welcome to Canes After Dark for the first time this season. Hopefully you got your coffee, energy drinks, snacks, whatever you have ready to go. This is going to be a late one on Tuesday night. Hurricanes 2-0, San Jose Sharks 0-2. Some very brutal, very tough overtime losses over the last couple of games. Of course, game FanDuel Sports South Network with Mike and Trip, 99.9 The Fan per usual. This is the first of 2 meetings between these 2 teams. The next time they face each other will be December 7th in Carolina. Now, points, goals, and assist leaders. Right now, Jarvis, 3 points, 3 goals. Aho with the 3 assists. Will Smith, 3 points. Jeff Skinner, former Carolina Hurricane, 2 goals, leads the Sharks right now. And, of course, Will Smith, 3 assists. Now, looking at the tail of the tape right now, power play, Sharks are at 37.5%, which is 4th. Carolina, 12.5%. Penalty kill, 80% for the Hurricanes, 16th. Sharks, 29th, already at 62.5%. Not the best. But the one thing for Carolina, first in goals for with 5. The Sharks, though, do score a lot of goals. 4.5, which is second, compared to the Hurricanes being first. However, the Hurricanes, 3 goals per game, 12th in the league. But the Sharks, 5.5 goals allowed per game, and that's 32nd. They are dead last. So this will be very interesting because you look at the goaltending. Alex Nedeljkovic, 391 goals against and 871 save percentage. Askarov, 693 goals against and an 841 save percentage. Not the greatest in terms of that case. Now, Frederick Anderson, 2-0, 2.89 goals against and 867 save percentage. Now, you're thinking to yourself, well, wait, why is it 2.89 for Freddie, but the team is 3? Overtime. There you go. Either way, it's most likely going to be Freddie Anderson. Now it depends on what the Sharks go with. Do they go with former Hurricane in Ned, or they go with Askarov? Either way, that's going to be very interesting to see how that works out. Now, looking at the San Jose Sharks guys, lines, potential players to watch for, there has been some news that Michael Misa, who they've recently drafted, will make his NHL debut for the Sharks against the Hurricanes on Tuesday night. Per Daily Faceoff, these are the projected lines for the Sharks. Eklund with celebrating into Foley, Jeff Skinner, Alex Wenberg with Will Smith, Philip Kurashev, Michael Misa, who they got from the Steelheads of Mississauga or Brampton, depending on whenever that will play it out. And then with Ty Dellandrea, then Barclay Goodrow, Adam Gaudette, and then Ryan Reeves, the journeyman that will fight pretty much everyone. Defensive pairings, Mario Ferraro, Dmitry Orlov, former Carolina Hurricane, Sam Dickinson with John Klingberg, Nick Leddy with Timothy Liljegren. A lot of guys who've played on a bunch of different teams and now are all with the San Jose Sharks. Of course, Klingberg with the Stars last year, Nick Leddy with the Islanders and was with our former Blue, Timothy Liljegren, former Toronto Maple Leafs. So those are kind of what you're going at right now in terms of that. And then, of course, goaltending, like I talked about, Askarov and Nedeljkovic. No surprise here. Got to keep your eye on Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith. They both had really good rookie seasons for the Sharks. Definitely two guys to keep an eye on. Watch out for Jeff Skinner. He's been kind of sneaky so far in the first two games for the Sharks. But also you got to watch out for Michael Misa making his debut. A lot of people are hyped for this guy. Let's see how he plays out. Defense will be very interesting. The fact that you do have from a Hurricane and Orlov, but how's Ferraro going to be? How's Klingberg going to be with everything he dealt with last season in terms of injuries? Nick Leddy on a new team and Timothy Liljegren. The defense is going to be something to watch for the Sharks. But I would say right now, yes, they do have Wenberg. Yes, they have Eklund, Toffoli, and all these guys. But watch out for the youth movement for the Sharks right now. When you got Misa, you also got Celebrini and Smith. Those are three guys. They are very young, but they are very skillful. And those are the guys the Hurricanes definitely need to keep an eye on. For the Carolina Hurricanes, no real surprise here. Got to keep your eyes on Seth Jarvis. 3 goals in the first 2 games to start the season. Of course, we all know he is now the sole player in Hurricanes Whalers history to score 2 game winners in the first 2 games of the season, which tied his total from last year. So you love to see it from Seth Jarvis. Another guy, maybe not to watch, but to keep a note of, Taylor Hall per Walt Ruff. This is the first time that Taylor Hall has scored 2 goals in the first 2 games of the season with his team. So stay hot, Taylor Hall. That's kind of a special note to have to talk about Taylor Hall with his good start. But like I said, first guy you have to keep watching, Seth Jarvis. He's on an absolute tear right now at the start of the season. You also want to look at Nikolai Ehlers. You know, he hasn't scored yet, but you know the chances are there. Him, Aho, Jarvis had so many chances together. Nikolai Ehlers has just not been able to cash in the first point with the Hurricanes. But I have a good feeling that against the Sharks, that might happen. So watch out for Nikolai Ehlers to hopefully get his first point as a Carolina Hurricane. Now, we've got to move to the defense. If Jaccob Slavin isn't ready to go and they throw in Mike Riley on the left side to go with Jalen Chatfield, of course, moving everyone up, I'm really curious to see Keandre Miller top pair with Sean Walker. Honestly, a good offensive, good two-way defensive player together on your first group. Miller has 2 goals. One of them is a power play, the lone power play goal for the Hurricanes after the first 2 games. But he's on a great start to his Carolina Hurricanes career, and I really want to see how he does on a top pairing. You know, of course, he's the second power play unit. Of course, I'm curious to see if they're going to throw him on the PK too, but this is an opportunity for Keandre Miller to show, hey, yeah, Jaccob Slavin might be out for this game, but I'm going to show you why the Hurricanes traded and signed me for the next 8 seasons. And I think this is going to be a very big moment for Keandre Miller. So definitely keep an eye out for the new defenseman, number 19 for the Carolina Hurricanes, to have a huge game against the Sharks. Let everyone know, hey, Slavin might be out, but don't worry. I'm here to assist any way I can. So I'm very excited to see what Keandre Miller can do. But it'll be interesting to see how the Hurricanes do to kick off their road trip. Of course, last year they had a sub-500 record on the road. Hopefully they kind of changed the narrative for the 25-26 season with Game 1 in San Jose at the Shark Tank against the Sharks. So hopefully they don't get bitten, they don't get eaten up, and they come away with some prizes at the end of this game, a.k.a. another W, 1-0 on the road, and hopefully 3-0 to start the season. But we will have to see on Tuesday night in San Jose, a 10 p.m. start on FanDuel Sports South, and of course on 99 The Fan with Mike and Trip. But until then, this is the Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making your first listen of the day. Here's your listen. Come to Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever listening to your podcast. If you want to keep up with me, I'm One True Zach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky, the Zachary Martin, where if you click the link tree in my bios, you can find all of my written content at thehockeyriders.com. I've been putting out a lot of stuff recently. We're talking about Seth Jarvis's early success being a catalyst for the Hurricanes. Also, make sure to check out all the game previews I'm going to try getting out for all the games this season, especially with the one with the Hurricanes against the Sharks. If you want to check out my other podcasts, it's the Surgecast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For Locked On Hurricanes, we're on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe. Hit the bell notifications so you don't miss a show. Hit the thumbs up so you like the show as well. Share with other Canadians so we become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Tuesday. Enjoy watching the Hurricanes on Tuesday night if you're staying up for Canes After Dark. But until next time, as always, let's go Canes.